to order. And thank you all for being here. And if we could have a roll call, please.
All right, just checking to make sure everyone on the line can hear us, and that's confirmed. So I'm going to start with the roll call with Director Cochran.
Here.
Giudice.
Here.
Roseball.
Here.
Hernandez.
Here.
Rodoni.
Here.
Har.
Here.
And Chair Rabbit.
Here.
President Tyria.
Here.
Nice, thank you. And we are still at committee hall. You have a quorum. We also have Directors Garbarino, Maston, Snyder, and Fear here in the room. And once again, we still have Dennis Mulligan next to us. There we go. Joe Wire.
Yes.
Eva Bauer-Furbish. Yeah. Thank you. Kim Manolius.
Go ahead.
There you go. Madeline Chen is here as well. Thank you. Dave Rivera.
Present.
Thank you. Mike Hoffman.
Here.
And Kelly Hopper. All right, that's everyone in the room. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. First action item today is ratification of previous actions by the Auditor Controller. There are 4 of those listed A through D. We do have Wale Kujapai here. Thank you for making the trek over to San Rafael. Wale. And if you can give us a brief update on what's happened in the last month with the investments.
All right, good morning, everyone. Good to see everyone this month. Going to jump right into the report, starting on page 10. So not a lot of movement in the yield curve in the month of July. I will say that the 2-year yield has been sort of, knocking against that 5% range over the last couple of months. I think in August, at least in the last couple of days, it has cracked that, but I don't think it's been able to sustain above 5%. The 10-year yield, though, even though it's not demonstrated in this report, but next month you'll see the 10-year yield has moved above 4% for the first time in quite some time. I know last meeting someone had asked a question about what supercore inflation was, so I made sure that we got that covered in this report. So basically when the Fed looks at inflation, they don't look at CPI, they look at PCE. So PCE takes out energy and food because those are the more volatile aspects of the inflation gauge. So core PCE and supercore PCE. So supercore PCE has no food, no energy, and also no housing. So core PCE and supercore PCE are the 2 areas of the inflation gauge that the Fed is not necessarily satisfied with the levels that there are currently. So they are sort of focusing on bringing those prices down. PCE in general is trending in the right direction. Ended at 3%. At the end of the month, but you can see that supercore and core are still well above 4. So the Fed is still thinking that there might still be additional rate hikes in the future. We're thinking we possibly might see one more before the end of the year. Because we have very, very strong unemployment, the unemployment numbers at 3.5%. Consumer spending continues to remain very, very strong. Consumer sentiment has also increased as there are, I guess, less probabilities of a possible recession. So the Fed has said that they don't see a recession down the horizon, and a lot of analysts, both in the fixed income and in the equity markets, are also saying that it's possible that we could avoid any sort of recession in the future. Move on to page 14. Look at the yield curve again. You can still see, again, it's inverted. That inversion is not as deep as it was a couple of months ago. I think at one point we were almost at 100 basis points. I think now we're somewhere between 65 and 70 basis points, but shorter term maturities continue to provide very, very good and robust yields above 5%. And then you can see with the 10-year was somewhere around that 4.17% range. That has upticked just a slight bit in the month of August. Equities continue to remain positive. We look at the S&P 500 total return for the year. That does remain fairly strong. It has pulled back quite a bit since the beginning of August, but still in positive for the year. We look at how yields have affected the portfolio. So on page 16, some of the new purchases that we were able to make in the month. A lot of these yields are very, very attractive. Most of them well above 5%. I know that there have been questions, at least from other clients, about why we're not just sort of packing the front end of the yield curve and just investing in shorter maturities, because that's where a lot of the yield is. I just like to remind everyone that we manage the portfolio for full market cycle. So at some point, when the Fed decides to cut rates, the portfolio would have locked in a lot of the rates at these 5 and 4% ranges, so that the yield of the portfolio will continue to be robust. So that is why we're sort of diversifying, not only investing on the short end of the curve with CAMP and some of these shorter maturities, but also to still extending maturities above 3 and 5 years so that we can lock in those yields for the long term. That's pretty much it. Again, if there are any questions, I will pause for questions.
Any questions from my colleagues? Director Groswell.
Would you educate me on what is the Bank of America Auto Trust ABS?
So basically, it's a collection of car loans where it's car loans secured by the actual vehicle. So ABS is asset-backed security. So the car would be the asset, the interest, and the income that's earned from that. The group of creditors paying back those loans would be the interest that's earned to the portfolio.
Anyone else? Director Snyder.
Do you think the Fed is going to raise interest rates again?
There is a possibility we might still get one more rate hike before the end of this year. There's no Fed meeting this month.
25.
Probably going to be a quarter point. Yeah. So that's what we're anticipating, at least possibly one more before the end of this year.
Director Thier, do you have something?
It's okay. He just answered it. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Appreciate you again being here. Appreciate the report. Thank you so much for that. Thank you very much. So these are action items in front of us, A through D. I'll look to my colleagues to see if there's any final questions, comments, or concerns. And if not, can we get a motion to approve?
So moved, Judy K.
Second.
Tony?
So we have a motion and a second. Can we have roll call, please?
Sure. I already checked in with Justine online. We have no public comments on this item, so we can continue forward. But first and second on this motion, starting with Director Conroy. Absent. Dorsey is absent, and Guardia is absent. Garbarino.
Aye.
Giudice.
Yes.
Roseball.
Yes.
Hernandez.
Aye.
Neston.
Aye.
Holton Peters is absent. Barr.
Yes.
Rabbit.
Aye.
Verdoni.
Aye.
Safai is absent. Snyder.
Aye.
Stephanie is absent. Thier.
Aye.
Second Vice President Hill is absent. First Vice President Cochran.
Yes.
And President Terrio.
Yes.
Thank you. You have 12.
Great. Thank you very much. And we'll move on then to item 4A, which is to authorize a budget increase in the fiscal year 23-24 Bridge Division capital budget for project 1923, which is the Golden Gate Suspension Bridge seismic retrofit. We have Joe Wire. Welcome back, Joe. And,
Thank you. It's good to be back. Yeah, I know I was ably filled in for by Amy and Jennifer, both for the last 2 months, so it has been a while. It's good to see you all. I am here because of a budget adjustment item, and it is to do, as mentioned, with the seismic retrofit project. Back in 2019, the board was asked and passed a resolution that allowed the district, with Caltrans support, to move funds from previous completed seismic projects into the latest and greatest seismic project that we're doing now. And thanks to your district engineer and her staff, there were unspent monies in those projects, and the board moved $9 million forward back in 2019. Since that time, which we thought would happen, since that time, Caltrans, the projects were closed out, and Caltrans agreed that we can move an additional $1.4 million forward into the new seismic retrofit project. And so this item is asking you, the board, authorization to do that. And so $1.4 million more will be moved into the latest seismic retrofit project. Again, that comes from monies that were not spent on earlier phases of the project. In addition, this report asked to rename that project that we renamed in the budget, and this time it would be renamed something a little simpler. It's called the Golden Gate Bridge Suspension Bridge Seismic Retrofit. That's for clarity. And there's no change to the overall district contribution at this point in this project, and that the revised project budget for this stage, which is the sort of pre-construction stage, is $11.3 million. And with that, I'm taking any questions.
colleagues, any questions of Joe on this particular shift? Seeing none, I'll see if there's any public comment on this particular item.
We have no speakers on this item. Justine, we have no speakers here. Do you have anyone on the line for this item?
I have no speakers on the line. Thank you.
No speakers for 4A.
And if there's no more further questions, comments, or concerns for Joe, can I get a motion to approve?
So move.
So we have a motion and a second, and a roll call, please.
All right, thank you. First is second, voting on item 4A, starting with Director Conroy is absent, Dorsey is absent, and Guardio is absent. Garbarino?
Aye.
Giudice?
Yes.
Roseball?
Aye.
Hernandez?
Aye.
Maston?
Aye.
Moulton Peters is absent. Parr?
Aye.
Rabbit?
Aye.
Rodoni?
Aye.
Sefai is absent. Snyder?
Aye.
Stephanie is absent. Thier?
Aye.
Second Vice President Hill is absent. First Vice President Cochran?
Yeah.
And President Terrio.
I'm gonna miss the old name, yes.
All right, thank you.
12 ayes and we're good to go. Thank you all very much for that. Moving on, the next item is what we just heard in the B&O, which is the authorize the budget increase fiscal year 23-24 Ferry Division capital budget for project 2041 Quarter of Madeira Marsh Restoration Construction. Ava just gave this. If there's any questions regarding the financial implications, now's your time. Seeing none. You want recusal?
Yes,
Duly noted.
thank you.
And since I'm not seeing any questions, I'll look to see if there's any public comment on this particular item.
We have no public comment on this. Justine, is that correct? We have no public comment on this item as well.
That's correct. No public comment.
All right, thank you.
And thank you, Ava, for the presentation. And I'll look to my colleagues for a motion to approve.
So move. Giudice?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. And if we could have a roll call, please.
All right, I'm voting on item 4B, starting with Director Conroy is absent, Dorsey's absent, and Guardio is absent. Garbarino?
Aye.
Giudice?
Yes.
Roseball?
Yes.
Hernandez?
Aye.
Maston?
Aye.
Moulton Peters absent. Parr?
Aye.
Rabbit?
Aye.
Rodoni?
Aye.
Sefai is absent. Snyder?
Aye.
Stephanie is absent. Thier is a recusal. Second Vice President Hill is absent. First Vice President Cochran?
Yes.
And President Terrio?
Yes.
Thank you. You have 11 ayes.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. Moving on then to item 6, which is the status report of the fiscal year 23-24 budget, and then quickly followed by the monthly review of the Golden Gate Bridge traffic tolls, bus ferry transit patronage fares, and the financial statements, all being presented by Joe Wire.
Thank you very much. You all, I'm for those of on the radio or whatever, I'm holding up a copy of the budget. It'll go online today also. Thank you very much to Jennifer's staff and to Amy's staff, who Amy was here last month, presenting to you to get this book together. This is the final one. As I mentioned, you all have printed copies, which can be very useful, but it is online if you find yourself at a cocktail party and want to whip out that phone and start talking about this Golden Gate Bridge budget. Yes, I'm sure that is the first thing that's coming to mind. Good charts on it, though. Anyway, so we are here to talk about the status of this actual budget. And as you know, when we passed it, we passed it knowing that it would have a deficit in it. And this has been common for us in the last 4 years since the pandemic. We are using federal one-time funding to support that shortfall. If you could turn to page, looks like 37 in your report, that's the table. We changed it a little bit this year because frankly, we're getting to the point where we're going to start running down that federal one-time funding. And so we want to have something a little more precise this time going forward. So as you can see in the far upper right-hand corner is the $57 million, which is what this budget was set to say what was going to be our shortfall. The next line down, which is labeled line 1, way over on the right-hand side, but that's the next line down. That's how much of the ARP funding, that's our third tranche, that's the last bit of our ARP funding. We have about $51 million left. We're going to use about $47 million according to this report. So this is up to date for this first month of the year. It's been out past. We're going to use about $47 million. That's going to get us down, a little less than $10 million left of the shortfall. We're not going to use any operating reserves. That's good news at this point. Tolls are up. That's this middle column. Tolls are up by 1.5 compared to what the budget said. Other operating revenues are also up by 1.1 million, and expenses through the first month are down 7 million. And so that combination has balanced the budget with the use of the 47 million. What we're expecting as we go through this year is hopefully the revenues will continue to run a little bit higher than budget. We're trying to be relatively conservative, and so that is our expectation that they will run a little bit higher than budget. We're expecting expenses to run lower than budget because as we mentioned to you when we put the budget together, it's a budget that allows the board to add the service back if the customer demand returns in a strong way. And we'll talk about that in just a second. As so far it's been returning, but in a very measured, subtle way, gradually, a little bit at a time. So we're not expecting to spend all of the budget authority that's in the budget document itself. So that 7 million number should grow as we go through the months. And if there's any, and it just the following in this report are the actual tables that talk about the monthly earnings from both the bridge and the bus and ferry. Any questions on this particular report? Yes, Dr. Roseball.
You know, being down, expenses down 7 million in 1 month seems a lot. Why is that? We don't have the staff?
Your general manager called with the same question.
So we've got a practice answer.
No, we're all ready to tap. We're all ready to tap dance on this one. No, the first month, and this is historical. And we don't before the pandemic, we didn't tend to spend a lot of time talking about monthly expenditures because they vary, things change. Sometimes you have 2 payrolls, sometimes you have 3. A lot of things are different in a short amount of time. But the first month, for some reason, tends to have a very low expenditure rate, and there's a lot of reasons why that is. It could be, as I mentioned, payroll, could be a number of things. One of them happens to be that people are busy finishing up last year. And what happens is what your accountants do is they look and say, well, if you're still trying to finish up things last year, we're going to grab that expenditure and we're going to post it in June because that's what the GASB tells them to do. Hey, if it's related to this year, even though it's going to spend next month, it should be in this year. So a lot of that activity and things that people are doing, and it takes people to spend money, it all gets reported in June. So June, at the end of the year, tends to be bigger. July tends to be smaller. So that's the reason that number is the largest. That's simply put, there's no other real good notion for that. We can talk about this next month because we'll be looking at this every month, and I think you'll see next month will be higher, even though August and July have the same amount of days.
The other thing is that's the expense side. On the revenue side, July is one of our best months because we have a lot of tourism travel. Before the pandemic, 5% of toll crossings in July would be rental cars. So those cars won't be there in January. Plus, we also have a lot more recreation going on with ball games and concerts and things in San Francisco. That helps with our tolls and our transit fare. So July looks really good when you look at the next report, when you look at revenues over expenses. But that doesn't necessarily mean we'll continue that during the year, but it's a really great start.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So we'll be watching each month, so you'll see how it looks next month.
Thank you.
Sure.
If there's no other questions, we turn to page 45 because it sounds like the script gave me free reign. Yeah, sure.
Hey, Dennis, you say it's a great start. How does this great start compare to other great starts?
This is the best yet. If you look at last fiscal year, ferry ridership was up about 50%, a little more. Bus ridership was up 26% compared to the prior year. Tolls are up about 2.6%. No, vehicle crossings 2.6%, but we had a toll increase. So the tolls went up July 1st. So July's toll numbers look better than July a year ago because there's a little more traffic. People are paying a little bit more. So there's a double effect there. So I think that's a big part of it too.
All right, thank you. And we'll look a little bit at that in this next report. If you turn to page 45, we only have 1 month's worth of data here in this report at this time, so it's not super fascinating. But if you, so we'll page down to page 49, which has the actual graphs that record the last 5 years. And this you can see a little bit what Dennis was talking about. At this particular time of year, the traffic and ridership graphs, there's 6 graphs here. 3 of them have to do with traffic and ridership, bridge, bus, and ferry, and 3 of them have to do with revenue. So the traffic ones are of interest because they were just exactly what the question we were just referring to. As you can see, the darkest line, the purple line, depending on if you have color or black and white, that goes halfway across the page is this fiscal year, 2020. Well, this calendar year, 2023. And you can see it is slightly above the year before, which is the gold line or the one right below it. We're slightly higher. And that's what we've been saying. The traffic on the bridge is slightly greater than it was last time. It's going to have larger impact on revenue because you also get an increase in revenues from the toll increase. But it is mimicking last year. As you can see, it's increasing during the summer months. It'll probably do the same thing as last year and decrease when it gets into the smaller days and also not as good weather and we don't have our recreational traffic. So that'll probably go down. But you see that bridge traffic is up and that's good. It's still down about 15 to 18% from where we were pre-pandemic. So we're running 82 to 85% of normal traffic. If you page down to the bottom of that page, that's the bus ridership. And again, you can see that the line that goes halfway across the page, the dark, it's purple on mine, but it could be black and white, could be just a dark line. That one is slightly above last year. Again, it is doing, as we mentioned Dennis mentioned about 50%. Maybe sometimes we're 48 of where we were pre-pandemic, but it is increasing ever so slightly from the previous year, and it's mimicking the same pattern. Bus tends to be a very consistent, doesn't drop as much in winter, drops a little bit, doesn't bounce up really high in the summertime. If you turn to the next page, page 50, at the middle graph, which is ferry ridership, and that one we see the largest, they get the largest summer increase and winter doldrums, or maybe what it's called that. We don't get as many riderships in the winter, and that's partly to do, that's always been historical, but it's also to do with the baseball business we have and now with Angel Island. Both of those increase when the weather is better and people have more free time, and in case of baseball, when the season is in play. And that's increased the numbers. But you can see ferry ridership is again higher than last year. In some cases, a few percentage points higher. Or say 10,000 people at a given month. It is, again, it'll probably follow the same patterns last year and drop off into the winter is what we're expectation for that. It also is running, depending on the month, 45 to 50% lower than the previous year, the pre-pandemic.
Revenue or numbers?
Excuse me?
Numbers or revenue or both?
That's numbers. Those are all people. Yeah, customers. And it's ferry revenue, as you can see from the way that line bounces around. That's the chart right below it. Ferry revenue is the stickiest in the sense that it doesn't. It comes in batches. Some of our payment with say Blue and Gold or others where we have reciprocity agreement, it'll show up in a particular month, and so you get these kind of bumps that you see where it looks like it goes up, looks like it goes down, but if you smooth it out. And you did that pre-pandemic too. You can see them in pre-pandemic also. It's always been that way.
Hey, Joe, can I
yes
interject with a question? Dennis and I were just talking, and I was going to ask a question whether that 82 to 85% normal traffic, what's the difference on the AM PM peak? But Dennis says that's still down 30%. And I'm just curious, as we move forward, if that 30%, for all intents and purposes, is going to be our new normal of remote work. And I don't know what the Bay Area Council polling surveys show in terms of what number of employees are actually working remotely. Is it close to that? And just thinking over the horizon that might be our new baseline going forward.
It could be. It's been extremely steady the last year. It's gone up. We've improved about 1% in the last year. In other words, for that commute, it was 30, now it's 29 or roughly, and that is make it when you see something that's steady for that long over all those months, it does make you think that that's where we're working from. That's our new place.
So the kind of work is he's the pessimist and I'm the optimist. We play this game all the time and it drives our staff nuts. He has a 30% vacancy rate in downtown San Francisco. That's not going to continue forever. At some point that'll shake itself out. And when it does, it may impact, in all likelihood, will impact travel. It won't be what it was pre-pandemic, but there'll be more coming back because eventually those spaces will fill with something, and those somethings will generate some type of travel, some sort of trips. And so I think that's a real phenomenon. The other phenomenon is some employers that were saying you could be remote forever are now saying, now you got to come in a couple of days a week. And 3 employers that have a big footprint in San Francisco are Salesforce, the largest private employer in the city, but Google and Meta, which used to be known as Facebook, have a lot of employees in the city. They're not just the South Bay headquarters. Google is one of the largest tenants in San Francisco. They're both mandating people come back, all 3 of those firms, 3 days a week. And all 3 firms, 2 of them are doing already, saying we're looking at your badge taps, and we're going to Google saying it will be part of, in Meta, it will be part of your annual performance review. Your badge taps, are you coming in so many days a week? So whether that lasts or not, there's been recent press coverage about that. So that may, the last year has been kind of slow. You may continue the slow. We may see a little bit faster uptick. We don't know. That's the honest answer, but there's trends out there. But eventually the space will fill up with something, and eventually employees and employers will stop arm wrestling about what the new hybrid work schedule is, and we'll be where we're at.
President Tyrion.
So, latching on to the optimism, it may be realistic, yes, to say that the commute hours volume, it will remain about the same, but it may be equally realistic to say that the higher volume in the off commute hours that we're seeing relative to the commute hours will also remain the same, because it's remained relatively higher proportion to the commute hours as well.
One anecdotal thing, people are going in different times than before. The ones that are going in,
right?
Our 6:30 ferry leaving Larkspur is 200 people every morning on it. So some people are going in real early, and then it seems like, at least in Marin, a lot of employees, when they go in, wait for after school traffic. They'll work from home for a while. Then after the school traffic rush, and if you live around a school in any community in the Bay Area, you know what that's like. Then they go in, and then it seems they go home early, and then they work from home in the afternoon, because they're not in the traditional 9 to 5 based on what we're seeing on bridge, bus, and ferry. So it's all playing itself out, and more to follow.
And I think the point you guys were just making, I think, is what we are seeing is that people can come in at different times, and maybe that will be the future. And that would be great for those of us who manage a choke point in the transportation system. It'd be lovely if they would spread themselves out across all the hours of the day and not try to all come in between 6 and 8 in the morning.
Yes, Director Garber.
I really like the idea of perhaps something like the Bay Area Council doing another, because I know they did a survey.
Every other month they do it.
Do they really?
And I put
Okay.
in the GM report, so I'll highlight it.
Oh, good. Because I was also wondering if the North Bay Leadership Council or a group like them in the North Bay would do that, because that's specific to our bridge. But then I thought, no, we really don't need that, because we've got Dennis who knows about. Did anybody know that Facebook went to Meta? Did you know that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, there you have it. You learn something new every day.
Director Baston.
And Twitter to X.
Yeah.
So a week or so ago, there was a report about several large office building purchases being purchased on the dip in San Francisco, and not just 1 or 2, but it sounded like maybe half a dozen by different groups. So it'll be interesting to see what plan they have and how successful they are, and it may
The important
result in
takeaway
more
is
traffic.
your portfolio does not include San Francisco real estate when it presents to you. But the 2 of the larger hotels in San Francisco have been given back to the bank, both in the vicinity of Union Square. And there's been a couple buildings, one that sold recently for 40% of the price it sold for a couple years ago. So the tax structure in San Francisco will have a delayed hit in the coming years. That'll present some challenges. But as buildings, sort out, then they will be modified, and we'll see what goes in there. And, that'll take several years. Right now, there's not a lot of construction going on in downtown San Francisco. Tenant improvements are on hold, but we are hopeful that that'll change in the coming months as some of these buildings get, purchased with new owners that have the ability to invest in them and, rent them out.
I appreciate the conversation. I think ultimately, though, and you're right, Dennis, the office vacancy kind of throws the other wrench in terms of the remote work. But even if you're talking about 3 out of 5 days, in the office, or 2 out of 5 remote, or whatever that change may be, that ultimately Be nice to get to actuals, closer to actuals on that, if we can really have some trust, not counting the market that will ultimately it will rebound in the city and just look a little different. But do appreciate that, and thank you for that discussion going forward as we craft our next budget and projections. And from SMART's perspective, I think our AM PM peak is still down, but the midday traffic is up, and I'm sure that's the case on the bridge, like President Terrio said. We're going to see that most places.
It will make us, we've mentioned it here before, will potentially be more nimble, transportation be more nimble in the future, looking at things, and also more flexible when it looks across the week. It used to be we ran the same thing every day. Well, in the future, except for maybe a Sunday, or Saturday, Sunday. So in the future, maybe we won't run the same thing every day, because people, as you said, if they're coming in 3 days a week, we'll have to figure out what the peaks are and run our system that way. And that's probably going to be the norm going forward. Okay, if there are any other no other questions on that, then we'll return to the next report, and that begins on page 55.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you for your report, Mr. Roy. You didn't go over the last few charts in the report, and I just want to make a comment. I'm certainly no financial expert. I'm not an economist, but I understand primary colors. And with these bar charts here, it looks like, and I understand that the blue line that goes across optimally should be close to the red bars at the top. And I know that these are bar charts, which means there's a lot of nuance that they don't reflect or include. But just looking at the two charts on the two sets of charts on page 52 and 53, it looks like there's, with regard to the bus fares versus budget, it looks like there's about 250,000 more in fares than was budgeted. In general, it looks like for patronage versus budget, it looks like in some cases there are about 50,000 more riders than budgeted or anticipated. The ferry looks like the fares are considerably higher than what was budgeted, and the patronage is considerably higher than what is budgeted overall. And I'm wondering, in this, we haven't had a transportation committee meeting, but at what point, or do these charts reflect that we're not optimizing the number of vessels and vehicles that are out there, or at what point does?
First of all, these are arrears. In other words, this is the last 12 months. And if you think about it, what this says basically is it takes the budget and puts it against what actually happened. So it's kind of like you're saying, well, geez, Joe, you didn't do a very good job. That would be a really good way to look at this. And then the truth is, you're
I don't
absolutely
mean
right.
to suggest that. I just want to optimize the number of buses and vessels.
And I'll just
that are
say,
out there.
we put together the budget estimation, now it's probably 15, 18 months ago, and things were a lot darker 18 months ago. And so we made very, for a variety of reasons, which we discussed here multiple times, we made very cautious revenue assumptions and ridership assumptions during that time period. It was to the district advantage and to make sure that we met those targets. Because the region had been funding us based on the fact that, and we needed that funding to survive. If we showed them that we were going to have a deficit, and if we limited that in any way, it was bad on us, and we didn't want to do that. So we were very cautious. What those blue lines represent is that very cautious look 18 months ago, looking forward, saying, this is what we think our ridership or our revenue is going to be. And then the red bar says, no, this is actually what it is. I mean, and it was much better. And that's why that's one reason why we invented the status report during the pandemic, was to show you that even though we said it was going to be really bad, it's actually doing better. And that's what these are basically showing you in looking back, that yes, things were better than what you said. And in a normal year, like if you go back 5 or 7 years before the pandemic, the lines are very, like you said, the blue line is right at the top of the red bars, pretty much because our traffic in those days was very easy to predict. We were a very stable organization really stable organization. Our bus ridership, ferry ridership year to year was pretty much what you would expect it would be. Same with the bridge.
and with respect to the efficiency, our average number of customers per trip on the bus, our bus business, is about the same as it was before the pandemic. We have fewer trips. So we're still adding trips where we see a need. We added about 114 about a month ago because we had a little slight uptick. So we're adding service back, but we're carrying about 20 passengers per bus trip and about 10 passengers per trip on our regional or what we call basic service. And so we're carrying about the same loads. And so we're trying not to run empty buses or boats because it's really expensive. It upsets our ratepayers if they see an empty bus go down the street with no one on it. Some of our sister agencies are getting criticized for that, but we are running things efficiently. You're not getting constituent complaints about the service isn't there. So the customers are happy. There's just fewer of them, and we're doing the best we can to stay on top of it. And we are aggressively hiring on the bus side.
Well, that's important to know that. I just, it's a very dynamic situation. I understand it changes on a daily basis, and there are lots of unknowns. We don't have crystal ball, but I just I think it's important to, restate the importance of staying on top. Thank you.
Director Maston and then Director Park.
Yeah. So I have a question that I was going to ask in rules, but it's sort of related to this as well. And that is that the July ferry ridership was below the projected number. And my question really is, so the pre-COVID year-over-year July ridership, did that increase? Or, I mean, I'm surprised to see that that the ridership was below the projected number. And, historically, it seems like it would continue to rise. I'm just
Ferry's more volatile. How well the Giants are doing affects the numbers, just to be blunt, and also the number of special events that are in San Francisco in a month. And so, we do macro estimates basically of what we think the trends are. And so I wouldn't be concerned by any one month. It gets into what are the events that month. So, if you have more concerts at Oracle Park, that helps, because like when the Dead was there, it was 600 passengers per trip, sold out. But if you have fewer concerts or fewer ball games, or if the Giants aren't doing as well, that all comes into play. And we are doing some marketing. Tuesdays were usually a slow day for the Giants ballpark ferry, so we did a 2-for-1. So we're trying different things based on where we see, little dips on stuff. But we can't control how many concerts are in the city, and we certainly can't control the Giants. The good news is we provide service to the Giants games, not the A's.
We've always had difficulty here historically with the bridge and how many weekends fall on a given month. If there are more weekends, you have to have less traffic in that month. If there's less, you don't, except for holiday weekends, and then the traffic goes up. So anyway, with in the summertime for the ferry service, some months we don't, and I'll be honest, we don't spend this much time with the projection. You have to know when the homestands are. Because so if the previous couple of Julys there were more homestands for the Giants than not, that number, because we're going to use last year and the year before as kind of months as a good way to project what's going on for this July. That could have been that simple. I could go, you could look, pull out the schedule and we can see how many homestands there were. But I do remember, I think if I remember correctly, baseball was down in July. I think that was, but it probably was homestands, not because the boats weren't full. I mean, Mike could talk to that, but yeah.
Great. Makes sense. Thank you.
Director Park.
Well, my heart sort of fluttered with all the nimble talk. And I'm hoping that the Strategic Planning Committee has a way of getting their head around that, what nimble means. I know that once in a while there's a place with the buses that doesn't think they have enough service. And so is that nimble, adding one route that has 10 to 15 people, or is it nimble in a big picture? We're pretty much fixed route people. I mean, we aren't really, but we pretty much are on a track, not to talk smart again, but we're pretty much on a track. We have ferries that can go certain places. We have buses that can go certain places. We have a bridge that is pretty static. And when we talk about being nimble, I think about all the different pieces, the people, how challenging it is to get the bid process going and to get all of that going. About the people, I mean, we are very flexible as a society. It takes us a month to figure out that no, that isn't open anymore. We're not go shopping there. So I guess that's just to the strategic planning committee. Good luck, because I hear you all talk about nimble a lot, and I'm not there. I mean, I'm not on the committee, but that is a real challenge, and that's what's going to keep us afloat.
Please.
We have beefed up the marketing department recently, and I think, well, this is a discussion for the committee, but I would hope that they would be better able to track and anticipate and imagine, and therefore help us be more nimble.
And that's a creative solution too, rather than, dipping into the routes and that sort of thing. But marketing is a creative solution.
I
So
mean, but they would both market and determine what opportunities are there that we are not currently
thank you for that.
exploiting.
Yeah, we're lucky that we manage a corridor, so we have bridge bus or ferry, so we can tell you how many people are going from San Francisco north or north into the city, every minute if you wish. So what we really need is an uptick in overall travel, and we're slowly seeing that. But that's really it. In terms of being nimble, different parts of the organization can be more nimble than others. And the reality is, it takes people to provide service. And so on the water side, we have a hiring hall. We want more deckhands because we're going to run a ballpark boat. We just pick up the phone and call the union, and they send us deckhands. Similar to the crafts of the bridge, where we have hiring halls, we can respond much more quickly than if we need to all of a sudden say we need to hire 10 more bus operators and we have an 11-week training course. Now, we're now looking at shrinking the training course and doing it differently, so we can be nimble, but we have different parts of the organization where we can react more quickly, just because we have outside partners that can give us the resources we need. That's just one of the other nuances as we are navigating the post-pandemic world.
And by the way, Dennis and David can both tell you that the bridge is not at all static; it's moving all the time.
Director Redowney.
Yeah, thanks. I was just going to comment on the nimbleism, but Dennis sort of covered it. But it also means maybe trying some things to see if it works and set a standard that you're looking for as a cost benefit, and maybe have to eliminate things if they don't work too. So, but I think we need to get there, or we're doing that too. I just wanted to ask Joe, related to the charts on 52, 53. As you see the red bars now, when you do your new budget, are you comfortable with moving your baseline up, given your experience? I know recreation may throw a hitch into that sort of approach, but as you do the future budgets, are you comfortable with raising the baseline, seeing what you're seeing here?
Yeah, I think you will see this year, the blue line will stay closer to where the red bars actually are. And this is, nothing gets this conversation, but I just want everybody to know that we have been working in the background to change these particular charts you're looking at. So we're still planning to do that. And it's nothing to do with this conversation. You're not pushing us in that direction. We were thinking about it, probably make them both lines, not bars and lines, just simpler to see, get the message across. These are very old. They've been the same way for, 15 years probably, looking just like this. So we were looking at that. But so it will look a little different. I think you'll be able to see if it's two lines, you'll see that the two lines are either following each other or where they're breaking from each other. We were more aggressive this year, I think, with the projections, but still compared to where we were pre-pandemic, I would say we're still conservative. In other words, we're still not being because what we don't want to oversell our ability to attract customers. I think that's still not a place for us in the region to be at this point in time.
And there's going to be additional state money now that will come to transit agencies. And so there is a risk that if you're not conservative, you may be leaving state money on the table. So I just needs
Absolutely, yeah. Director Garbarino.
This is a comment and a question, and it perhaps is something that should be housed in a tutorial in the Transportation Committee. But this conversation makes me think of the movie 2001: A Space Odyssey and HAL, right? The computer. You guys are all phenomenal in your projections. I know, spot on, and you do such a good job. But is there a threshold or a computer software that tells you when you've hit that threshold and now you bump into the next category of service delivery or add a route? Or
I think ChatGPT could do that for us.
Or Meta.
Bus and ferry are different in terms of how they manage the service, but the staffs in both work with our planners to study the trends. spend a lot of time looking at the numbers. So, Larkspur, they added trips back in April, I think was the last time we added. We added 3 trips, but they track it. So they'll see, how many people are riding the boats. When the boats are getting kind of full, they say, okay, do we need to add a trip to spread it out? Last time we did that was April, but if we're not carrying more than, a little over 300 passengers in a boat that's got a capacity of 400 or 450, we're probably okay right now. We have a lot of reserve capacity with the service we have out there. The bus side or average per trip ridership is about where it was before the pandemic, but some of that is, those numbers are masked by the people we're carrying in San Francisco. One growth opportunity is how we collect our fares from tourists, because we're carrying a lot of tourists now, much more so than we ever did, even before the pandemic, to the bridge. And it's difficult for them to pay their fare, and we want to make it easy to take people's money, so that's something we're talking about.
Director Snyder.
We also have the advantage of, in the customer service business, both Bridge, Bus, and Ferry, and with Bus and Ferry, there was a human person, district employee who was sitting in every conveyance. So every bus and every ferry, they're watching. So if we're having issues where there's more people or no people, we hear about it. I mean, it's easy and fair. There's fewer ferries, but even on bus, there's always the bus operator, and the bus operators talk. We have the computers also to monitor it back in the office. So, and on the bridge, we've got people in the sergeant's office looking out that window at the traffic 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. We have a real good sense, and we monitor very closely what's happening on our 3 parts of the operation. So if it's not a surprise when we sort of need to do something more. Like if there are customers coming back, we're going to know it, and we do.
Oh no, I always appreciate our approach to the budget. It's very conservative, and I mean the rest of the Bay Area and maybe even almost more to you, Rabbit, is the MTC, the whole bailout thing. It's it's tangential with them trying to help out. I think that's kind of dead now. Is that? But I mean, or is that it's on a 2-year thing? But that would help in some.
Leader's bill is on a 2-year.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, so the $1.50 bridge toll, but the
state budget
quote unquote bailout did have money.
The state budget, Assembly Bill and Senate Bills 125 included money for transportation. It included flexibility mostly for existing funds for transformative projects for the improving the environmental footprint of transit. And so there's $4 billion that was already contemplated by transit agencies that I think our region's going to keep invested where it was going. There's 1.1, their share of it. There's 1.1 billion of new money, and that money is flexible. The Bay Area will get about $400 million of that. Earlier this week, CalSTA issued their draft guidelines. There's a webinar on Monday that Joe's staff will be participating in. And then MTC over the coming months will kind of figure out how they're going to dole it out locally.
Will we be eligible for any of those funds?
Yeah, so we'll be eligible. So having a conservative budget is not bad, but they're diving into the numbers because some of our sister agencies are much more conservative than us, and everyone's operating a little differently. And so MTC is doing their job, staff there. They're looking at everyone's numbers. They've asked for different numbers at least 3 times. Yeah. And they're trying to standardize assumptions, and they're trying to do what's fair. They're trying to avoid some of the pitfalls they had in the early rounds of the federal COVID relief money. But over the coming months, we'll find out how much we're going to get of the Bay Area. Is about $400 million over the next couple of years of additional bailout. That'll also assist us. And, that affects how Joe presents the budget.
And then, and the flexibilities in the both capital or continuing services.
That's correct. But when we get the money, it'll be for continuation services.
Yeah, it'll be for operating. I mean, the reason is MTC staff at staff level and hasn't bumped up to the commission yet, but it's struggling with the trying to level the playing field so that all of us operators are treated somewhat fairly. I mean, that's one of their goals is to do that. And because the transit properties made very different policy decisions, and I use ourselves, what we've asked you to do and what the board has done is to line the level of service up with the number of customers and to make that federal one-time, that reduced our costs, and it made our federal one-time money last all these years. And that was the goal, because we were trying to wait for our passengers to come back. That was the whole point. There are other properties, and the poster child is BART. So I'll use them as the poster child. They have expanded their service. They still have 40% of their passengers, just like we do, or actually less than we do. And yet they're running 100% of their service, or almost 100% of their service. So what we're trying to tell the staff at the staff level is that if you use that as a baseline of who's needing money, we're not going to look very good. And so just so you all know, we're repeating that every time we get on the phone is, hey, we're not going to look very good. Nothing against those guys. Different policy decision. Our board said this, board did that. But if you use that as a baseline, we're in trouble. We won't look good, and we will get less. And that is our big concern, is that we still have needs, and yet because their deficits are going to be harder because they're running all this empty. Well, empty is not the right word, but service that's less than fully utilized.
FTC was really trying to find new money. And while we appreciate, I think everyone appreciates some flexibility in existing sources of money, usually what that means, it's already been accounted for somewhere and someone's ox is going to get gored. In this case, in the Bay Area, some of that had to do with like BART to San Jose, big capital improvement, full funding agreements that we're going to pull down billions of dollars, but we had to make sure that we had the upfront local match. So there's a few of those. Core capacity for BART as well. BART is the lightning rod, even when you go to Sacramento, regarding the way that it's been operating and whatnot. Some of it probably more fair than other criticisms, to be honest. But yeah, there's in California, just the last piece, California overall has been less than generous in terms of public transportation than a lot of other states, especially back in the East Seaboard, where and we have and the Bay Area has very high transit rates, but as a percentage of state budget that comes to those areas, it's been smaller. And so we were trying to make that point with our friends in Sacramento. Of course, since they haven't had to pay for it, they don't necessarily want to start down a track of having to pay for it. So there's been a lot of interesting discussions, but stay tuned. Appreciate that. Thank you, Joe.
Okay, so we'll
or Hal.
Move on to page 55. That was item number 8, and it's the monthly financials. And again, it's just the first month, so we'll just stay on the first page. The table in the middle is similar to the table you've seen for the last year or so. And this we discussed this earlier. The far right hand side is the column on the far right hand side is the current year to date, and of course it just involves 1 month. The bold numbers in the middle, the 21.7 million of the revenues, the 15.6 million is the expense, and the 6 million below that is the operating over revenues. Well, as my optimist called me on the phone and said, "Woohoo, we're great," you know. And the truth is, yes, it was a great month. In other words, when you have your revenues over your expenses, that's exactly what you want to do. You want that to go through the whole year. Unfortunately, as Dennis mentioned, this is our best revenue month pretty much. And as Dick pointed out, this is our lowest expense month for the most part, except for maybe February. But I bet you February will be 15 million. So anyway, so this was a great month. It looks good. And we'll look at this every month, and you'll see that the revenues and expenses will come closer together as we move into the winter months. But it's a good start. It really is. So very positive on that system. And then the next report, which is on page 65, is the capital report. And we will skip that, and we'll talk about it when we get into the quarterly, because capital projects last for years. 1 month's worth of data does not tell you anything about what's going on in those reports. But it is there because we produce it every month. And with that, I will close the financial reports and open for any other questions that might be.
We're getting into lifetimes for capital projects.
Yes.
Years, we
Yes.
don't last that long.
Yeah, we are very capital intensive here at the district.
Joe, thank you to you and to your staff for the great work, and thank you for the conversation today. Any final questions, comments, or concerns on items 6, 7, or 8? Not seeing any, I'll ask Madam Secretary if there's anyone from the public who'd like to speak on items 6, 7, or 8.
Justine, we have no one in this room. Do you have anyone on the line that wanted to speak on items 6, 7, 8, or even 9 for public comment?
We have no public comment on any of those items. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, with that, can I get a motion to adjourn our meeting? In a second. We have a motion and a second, and hearing no objections, we are adjourned until next time.